Session, we're asking a big question. Why do most leaders think they're good communicators, but their teams disagree? Now, that's a slightly provocative title, I know, but listen, we're all broadcasting in a busy world, and it's good to get some attention, right? So, what are we talking about? Who am I? Why am I casting aspersions on people's ability to present? So, let's get into this, and let's talk about what we might be able to do. This is not a negative thing, actually. It's quite a positive piece of work. So my name's Graham, and I've been working in this particular space, presentation skills, conference speaking, the ability to stand up and say a few words, whether to a camera or face to face. Well, professionally for more than 35 years. God, it's old. Jeez, it's a long time. So I first started standing up and saying stuff in front of people 40 years ago, and started making money from it 35 years ago. Went really full time with my business Blue Beetle 30 years ago. And of everything we work on, we help a lot of organizations, hundreds of organizations now over this time period, with all sorts of areas of leadership development. So all the things you'd normally expect to see on a leadership development program, right the way through from people in their first role, so grads and apprentices and new starters, and helping them step up and develop, and people taking their first moves into first line management, whether we talk about supervisors or managers, however we want to term that, right the way up to ELTs and SLTs. And leadership, of course, has a whole set of skills that most of us might recognize and see are relevant in these particular areas. And one of the areas, one of the skills, one of the problems that many people have is related to presentation skills. Now, the problem straight away with the phrase presentation skills is that many people say, well, that doesn't apply to me. I don't really do presentations. But when you ask them, when you sort of find out, well, how do you do what you do? So many supervisors, so many managers, even at entry level, find themselves having to do a daily briefing or a weekly catch up or a once a month report to whoever else. And the cold, hard reality is, first of all, this is a part of everyday work, right? Whether online, whether face to face, people are expected typically to stand up and say a few words. But secondly, it's not something that most people are very good at. And worse, most leaders, most managers, most supervisors could be a lot better, but they don't really know that they're not as good as they thought they were. Or worse, actually, they think they're okay, but nobody has ever told them. So we're going to talk a little bit about this, and we're going to talk a little bit about what you might want to do to find some improvement here. Now, the good news, once you identify that you'd like to be better at presenting, once you identify that that's something you'd like to improve in your skill set, we can actually move quite quickly. So we can help you if that's what you want. And we can help you make your presentation style still you, right? There's a memory I've got, and I'm going back to late 90s, early 2000s now, just as we were starting to get more and more people asking us about this particular skill for leaders, where a couple of places we were working, we did a lot of 3-day, 4-day residentials, staying in hotels, open bar bill, you get the picture. And people that had been in the game already, I think at that point, 20, 30 years, saying they had been on presentation skills programs before, and they were they always felt worse coming out than when they went in. And I think part of the problem is there's this sort of old school belief that if you're giving a presentation, you have to stand in a certain way, you have to put certain things. People today, right, still say, I move my hands too much. Not me, they do. They worry about how much they move their hands. Or people get very worried about their accents, right? So people worry about how they sound. People get concerned about whether or not they are the sort of person that can be taken seriously. And a lot of that stems back to what I think was kind of an old school way of doing presentation skills. And the old way, and a lot of people still do this, by the way, but the old way was, we're going to march you in here, we're going to be quite high status because we're confident in front of you, we're going to film you. That's just about the worst thing ever, isn't it? Nobody likes that. Then we're going to adds to the pain and the misery by making you watch the video in front of all your colleagues. I mean, it's the worst ever. And then we'll spend a day, 2, 3, 4 days doing whatever. And at the end, oh my goodness, you're all a bit better than you were. But the problem with all of that is it kind of ignores this big problem. And anybody watching this, whether you're watching this live or you're watching this in a re-record, often how you look and sound is a bit of a surprise to you. That's why that old form worked, because people were surprised at how they looked on video. Now, even though everyone's got the ability to film and photograph nowadays on their cameras, on their phones, a lot of people still don't really like to watch themselves. And I get that, right? There's lots about me that I'm not especially comfortable with. But when you've done enough presentations, when you've seen yourself on camera enough, when you've done enough stand up in front of large numbers of people, you go through a bit of pain, to put it bluntly. And once you come through the other side, you are at a massive advantage compared to everybody else. And we can all pretend it's not a competition, but it kind of is, isn't it? When you stand up at your next organization's conference, you want to be confident. I spoke to one of my coaches recently who said, I want people to be blown away by how confident I am. I want them to be amazed by the ability that I have on stage, that I don't seem nervous, that my mouth doesn't go dry, I don't forget what I'm saying, that I hold the audience in the palm of my hand. So many people want this. And it's not that difficult. But the first thing you have to do is to understand what you look and sound like. Now, if we can get through this first bit, and I'm going to give you a quick heads up now. When you rehearse looking in the mirror, that's not how you look and sound. That's how you see yourself in the mirror. And in the mirror isn't really how you look and sound. The best way I can explain this: when you're clowning about, perhaps at a party, on a holiday or something with your family, and somebody films you, it's quite funny. And you look back and you go, oh, yeah, I'm doing my best impression there, or whatever. You know how you looked and sounded because that's you clowning about. But you know, when you were last at a barbecue in the summer and somebody filmed you and you were just chatting to your pals and you're having a drink, something to eat, and you watch that back, now, that's what you really look and sound like. Your body is that shape. That is what your face does when you talk. That is how you laugh. Yeah, that's what you do. That is the slightly unsightly bulges you might have in your body. There might be all sorts of things. Yes, you are going bald. That is what your beard really looks like. I'm trying to give you a range of options. My point is this: how you look and how you sound, everybody else knows except you. So if you can get through this, if you can get past this initial pain and discomfort, and it is awkward, you then come out the other side a lot more comfortable compared to everyone else. And this comes back to the question I'm asking: why most leaders think they're good communicators and their teams disagree. You see, most leaders don't ever really hear or see what they look or sound like, because your team generally won't come up and go, hey boss, thanks for the presentation. Oh my goodness, you overran by an hour. Everybody was desperate to go to the toilet and have coffee and make phone calls and do work, but we had to listen to you because you're the boss. You had way too many slides. It was boring. That joke you tell at the end, you always tell that joke. Nobody ever asks questions because they just want to get out. And you've got two vocal tones, on and off. You're boring and short. No one will do that to you because it's hard, right? But if you can get through this bit I'm talking about, if you can get some sense of what you look and sound like, then you will come to a lot of these conclusions yourself. And I don't mean that in a crushing, horrible way. But what I do want you to understand is that the way you talk, the way you sound, the way you are normally, that's fine. I'm never saying, when I teach presentation skills to people, and I work with people with all sorts of experiences, all sorts of seniority levels, I'm never saying to people, you've got to be more crazy or more zany or more lively or any of these things. Because we always understand, the moment we get a better understanding of how we look and sound, we understand immediately what we need to do differently. You see, this is the point. When you come back from holiday and you meet your friends in the pub, right? You and your partner, and they go, what was it like? Now, you've told versions of your holiday story dozens of times. So you've gone, oh my God, we got the airport, we were 2 hours early, and Mrs. wants to do this, hubby wants to do that. Oh my gosh, it was so much hard work. And then this couldn't find the luggage, lost a child, couldn't find my passport. Right? Everyone's been through that ability to tell a story. And when you tell that story, breaking news, you've never needed a PowerPoint, have you? You've been able to tell a story and people have wanted to know what you're going to say next. Because quite naturally, that's what you do. But something happens. When you're at work, when you're doing a presentation, when you're on conference, when you're in front of hundreds of people, when the camera's on and it's watching everything, you go a bit weird. You get a bit self-conscious. If you have a microphone, you suddenly hear what you sound like, and you don't like it. If you're on camera, you get a glimpse in the monitor screen, you think, oh, I need to lose some weight. You go through this process of suddenly being confronted with what you look and sound like. And your colleagues won't tell you because it's about the work. And if you do try to come back and fix it, it suddenly becomes very awkward. So what's the solution to all of this? Well, if you really want to know, you need to start knowing what you look like online. You need to maybe do yourself some social media videos. And if you don't want to post anything, that's fine. Of course, loads of people don't. There's nothing to stop you. The next time you want to plan something for your speech, your presentation, is record it talking to the camera. When you've done that, you only need a minute or so, sit down and watch it by yourself. I pre-warn you, it will probably be horrible, but something will happen. When you watch it back and you get through the pain of the things you don't like, you'll suddenly notice you say something, you'll think, oh, that's quite good. Or you'll tell a joke that's quite funny, or you'll explain something and you'll manage to just grab that attention the way you explain it. And you won't necessarily know why that is, but it will be really obvious. And you will see this within 60 seconds. If you were to record for yourself a 60-second introduction to the next time you have to give a presentation, film it, don't look at it in the mirror, and then just watch it back. I can almost guarantee you'll be quite pleased with a little bit of it. And then you can come back and have another little go, and you can start to fix it again. Our problem is that we tend to rely on either people that are in our teams, and they won't really tell us what we're like, because why would they if we're the boss? We have our own perception of ourselves, which is completely different from reality. So we need to understand what that's really about. And then once we've got that, then it gets a lot easier, because then what we can do is we can actually notice that our presentations maybe aren't really working as well as they should. Most leaders, when they are speaking, when they are talking to a team of people, are so caught up in not making a mistake, putting everything right, not saying the wrong thing, getting the tech right, all of these things, they don't really have an awareness of how they look and sound. But in the real world, you do, don't you? On a day-to-day basis, you know what you look and sound like. But it's so difficult when we do it online, when we do it face-to-face in a presentation skill, because we're worried all the time about, are we sticking to time? Are we doing the slides? And that, by the way, is getting towards the end of this program. So if you're enjoying this, do make sure you let me know, put some comments in, share some likes, send some digital love my way, and I will do a second part for you. Because what we need to understand, if we know what we look like, then we can come back and start saying, right, do I need all these slides? And 9 times out of 10, no, you do not. I was working with a group 2 days ago, and one of the group who's been presenting for a very long time said that they'd had this epiphany and suddenly realized that they spent hours and hours and hours and hours making slides. But I have this point for you. No one in the history of the world has ever come out of a presentation so moved by the font they decided to buy what you were selling. That's never happened. But you have come out of presentations where the speaker said something and you went, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of that before. And you've got back and done a bit of Googling, and you've got yourself motivated, and you've done a new thing. That was never about the slides. It was never about the color. It was never about the positioning of the font. And respect and love to marketing people everywhere. Of course, the slides have to fit your template. I get that. It makes sense from a marketing perspective, but from a presentation skills perspective, it does not. From a presentation perspective, we need to be able, as speakers, to connect to our audience. And if we spend all of our time worrying about the slides and the deck, our audience, if we are the leader of that team, our audience is making sure that we've done the right thing in the right order, and nobody really gives any focus to the single thing that you can control really easily. That's you, and that's how you speak. So my call for you today, if you want to improve your presentation skills, start thinking about how you say it, not what you say. Everyone I have ever worked with, when given the task of doing a presentation, starts with what is going to be on the slides. That will spend hours. You can spend a lifetime getting the perfect deck, and it will still only count for about half of the actual impact the presentation gives. Oh, and that's at best. And you know that's true because you haven't ever come out of a presentation moved by the slide deck, but you have been deeply affected by the way somebody told you a story. And that could be in the most obscure places. You could have been sat having a coffee with a friend and they told you something, and you still remember the way they told you and the words they used and the emotion that it evoked. And this isn't about becoming an actor or a storyteller, but this is about being you. And if you do this, your ability to present will become infinitely more powerful than pretty much everyone else's. If you want to know more about this, do let me know. Thank you for being here, and